You're listening to She Speaks, a Let Her Speak podcast that celebrates women's fearlessness, resiliency, and readiness to change the world. Hi, everyone. This is Catherine Porth, founder and chief advocate of Let Her Speak and your host of the She Speaks podcast. Back in 2020, at the start of the pandemic, I created a project with the goal to bring visibility to women's stories and to help inspire others while having to remain socially distanced. I called it the She Speaks series. My dear friend Erika Biddix was one of my first interviews. She is a beautiful example of what it means to be a woman who supports other women. Without giving too much away, throughout the pandemic, Erika faced challenge after challenge after challenge for her business, and her personal life. But her tenacity and passion kept her going. This interview you're about to hear was recorded in August of 2020 during a particularly difficult period for her business. After listening to Erika's story of where she had been leading up to 2020, tune in to the next episode where we catch up with her 2 years later. I know you'll be inspired by her story and thrilled to hear how far she's come. Without further ado, let's travel back to 2020 with Erika Biddix, founder of Aught Entrepreneurs, formerly Girl Boss Offices. And ask you a tougher question in the very beginning. Okay. So one question that I'm starting to ask more and more women, just out of curiosity, is what is the legacy you hope to leave?
Whoa, just gonna make me cry before we even get started. What legacy do I want to leave? If I was gone tomorrow and I could watch, whatever celebration I would hope was happening, I honestly would be happy if everybody just said she was a nice person. That really would. That's kind of my goal. I've got kids and we tell them all the time, we've got two jobs. One is to keep them safe and the other is to turn them into nice people. So I think if that's how I was remembered, I would be perfectly happy. But if I could go farther than that, I think it would be taking that a step farther and having other people choose to be nice people based on some interaction maybe that they'd had with me. If I had to define a legacy that I specifically was leaving. And to be nice people means supporting others. It doesn't mean all believing the same thing or all doing the same thing. It just means how can you support other people that are out there? How can they know that you support them? So
that's great. And I mean, that's one thing that I think you definitely have the reputation for is the amount of support. And so I like to talk about specifics because everybody talks about, I'm trying to be supportive, but we all manifest that in different ways. So for you specifically, what are things that you actually do to really showcase that support?
Yeah, so we as a concept are limited on the number of members that we can have, right? So we can only have 14 women who are actually members. But the mission is to be so much more for so many others than just those 14 members because they're rotating in and out. Their leases are 3 months to 12 months, although I think there's some that are always, never going to leave, which is awesome. But so there will be some turnover there, but we want to be seen as a supportive force for female entrepreneurship in total. In Knoxville, great. We want to take it kind of a little bit bigger than that. So we spend a lot of time on our social media, anytime we're talking to others in the community, promoting other female entrepreneurs. We probably promote those who are not members more so, because the ones who are members we have within our community, and so they're getting that benefit of it. But just using kind of what has unintentionally become a voice in Knoxville, which has been an awesome side effect of it, to promote other folks. And what we see are new women who come to town calling our offices, and they don't want an office. They just want to know how to get involved with female entrepreneurship. And so for us to be seen as a resource like that has just been phenomenal. And we've really tried to lean into it to the point where I was discussing it with two women earlier today. And I said, I got to remember to promote our business, not just like actual girl boss offices, not just everybody else. And they both were like, we've been waiting for you to realize, that. So yeah, that's hard to focus on what I'm doing, because I try to focus a lot on what other people are doing a lot of the time.
Yeah, that's always the difficult thing of being someone who loves to be a cheerleader, is you forget to be a cheerleader for yourself sometimes.
True story. I hopped right on social and I cheerleaded us a little today.
Good. I noticed that you referred someone to the Women in Entrepreneurship group, that she introduced herself. So that's incredible. Which leads me into a little bit of your own personal entrepreneur journey, which you talked about a little bit when we shared your story on our social feed. But I'd love to hear more of going back as far as you want to, of what that journey's looked like.
It's a long story. I'm going to try to give the short.
Okay.
So my first job straight out of college was working for my sorority, which was actually one of the hardest jobs I think I ever will have in my life. So we traveled as recent graduates to different chapters around the country, made sure they were following policy, that they were getting what they needed from a leadership perspective, et cetera. So just as a fresh college graduate, being in that role to other women who I was only a year or two older than was interesting. Plus we still had dial-up internet. We had to call to make all of our airline reservations. So that was back in the day. I went from there into advertising, which is what my degree from college was. And that I enjoyed it, but I just didn't feel like I was doing anything. You know, like we would do the project, we would make the money, and then it was kind of like, okay, that's done. I just didn't feel like there was any overall benefit happening out of that. But we did get to do a couple of projects where, for instance, I worked with an insurance line. And so we took their Medicaid information and we translated it into multiple other languages. And then we went out, back when CDs were a thing, and we distributed the CDs. And so I think that was probably my first taste of work, being able to help other people. So that was kind of the first taste of that. During that time, I did all of the internal marketing for Save-A-Lot food stores, and we would hire an outsourced meeting planning company to do their big conferences. So we would do all the content, et cetera, and then they would do all the logistics. 2 years into that, they called and said, this is really what you should be doing. Come work for us. I'd never in a million years thought I didn't even know a meeting planner was a thing. So I started with them in 2001. Yeah, 2001. And I was there for about 12 years. My husband's a college professor, and he won a Fulbright Award in 2015. And what that did is it took our family to Montreal, Canada for 5 months. We've got 3 little ones. They were in school, and I just didn't think I could do the work I was doing, because now I'm 12 years in, right? And I'm working 90 hours a week regularly. And I needed a break, number one. And number two, I just didn't think it was feasible to run the family in another country and do that at the same time. So during that time in Canada, we kind of got the white space we'd never had. I often say we were just gerbils on a wheel at that point, and all of a sudden we didn't have to work 90 hours a week. And everybody in Canada was not stressed out. It was crazy. Like nobody cared about their job. If you asked them how they were, they would give you an honest answer about the meal they had just had. They never started it with, I'm so stressed out, or it was an awesome experience. And by the time we left there, I knew it was time for me to be done working for somebody else. So I did quit that job. I took another one locally here in Knoxville. That only lasted about 3 months because I think the seed had already been planted at that point. So in 2016 in April, I came home from quitting my job. My husband handed me a bottle of wine with a straw in it and said, get to getting. And so I hopped online and registered my company. So that's where my entrepreneurship journey really, truly started. It was April 2016, launching Biddix Meetings and Events.
Okay.
You want me to stop there?
You go as far into the story as you want to.
Well, so I haven't really talked about this much. So I grew up the oldest of 4 kids. I was, a leader in student council. I was an editor on the newspaper. I made great grades. I got a scholarship to college. I just had been raised to think that I was meant to do something big and great. That was just kind of that. I love to read, and I had read the whole library at that point, I think. And so I just in my mind, I was gonna something was just gonna happen. And then the reality is, you go to school, you get a job, you make your money, but unless you have to be very intentional to go out and do something great and big and grand. And by virtue of my husband's job, we've moved a couple of times because my job can kind of go and his is, location specific. We had kids, and I always have worked. Pretty much anybody who knows me would tell you that I actually am really great at separating mom life from me and my job and my personal, I'm really pretty good at that. But all that to say, I was just living life. I wasn't doing anything great. And for years I kept thinking, what am I going to do to live up to this expectation that I think others have of me or that I have of myself? And at the same time, I was starting my own company. I was starting to realize my passion was really female entrepreneurship, which I had not understood before. It is even really a thing, that female entrepreneurship was even a thing. And I've got a mentor that I work with, and she, I saw her speak and had a chance to have dinner with her and kind of talked with her about what I was thinking. And she kept saying, you've got this, this is your story. You've just got to kind of lean into it, And then I went to a conference for meeting planners, and the woman on the stage said to me, or said to the audience, or to me, there were 6,000 people. She said, your purpose is what happens to others when you do what you do. And my head literally exploded. And I thought, the only thought that kept going through my brain, for the next 48 hours, I want to cry thinking about it, was maybe I'm not meant to do great things. Maybe I'm meant to help other people do great things. And so that is where I've landed, is that I am never going to be the first woman president of the United States. I am likely not going to fund some large nonprofit that makes a huge difference in the world. But maybe the support that I can offer other women will result in that down the line. And I'm totally cool with that. I am firmly behind the idea that an idea that I have had may be the springboard for somebody else to do their thing. There we go.
I love that. And that's something that's often not talked about, and I wish it was talked about a lot more, are the people behind the people. And I've been reading more and more about stories that get forgotten about, or people that do these incredible things that walk among us and none of us know anything about them. And I think it's the same can be said of these people that influence greatness while they aren't seeking it for themselves.
I don't want to put myself on that list, but that's, I guess that's what I'm aiming for. The joy that I have is in watching others succeed. So I try to be really intentional. I use that word a lot, intentional with talking about Girl Boss, because Girl Boss is not me. Girl Boss was an idea that developed in my head and I put into the world for others to use. But it is hard for me to go out and be like, listen to how great we are. But the reality is the mission is great, and the people who have bought into it are, being supported by it and being changed by it. And we are making positive progress as an organization. And in order to continue doing those things, I have to be willing to put myself out there and talk about it, So I never thought I'd be doing these, but it turns out I am. There we go.
So with the fact that you now have this idea out there, and it's a living, breathing thing that's outside of just your mind now, how has it morphed? And I forget, when's your 1-year anniversary for Girl Boss?
We opened our doors December 1. So we are, my word, we're at 9 months. Is that 9 months? Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, it feels like it's been a lifetime. Because during this, we've also had 2020. I mean, so it's been 9 months with 2020 just thrown right in there. You know?
Right.
Yeah, it feels like it's been forever.
So then how has it changed now that you have this influence of all these other women that are part of this community?
I think part of my personal downfall has been I love to offer other people help, but I don't accept it terribly well. I actually really suck at that. And so part of this has taught me that to accept the support of others. We had an awful lot going on in our personal lives when we opened Girl Boss that we didn't know all those things were going to be happening. So even in the 6 weeks leading up to it, I wasn't even in Knoxville for a good portion of that. So I had friends that were here building IKEA. I had people that were here letting in the phone and the internet people because I couldn't be here to do that. And I didn't have a choice but to lean into that. And what I love about it is that accepting assistance from others has been part of our story from the very beginning. And if we'd not had all that family stuff going on, I probably wouldn't have done that. But I think it's made such a big difference because there are a lot of people who are not members here or who really don't have any tie to it other than a personal relationship with me. And they feel part of it. They feel part of the family and they feel part of the story that is Girl Boss. And I think that that's just been really cool for them and also has helped us develop that kind of support network outside of our walls.
Because I think one thing, that I'm curious about, especially since when I worked in furniture, I worked with co-working spaces a lot and in the design of the co-working spaces. And I think there's some misconceptions sometimes about how people view the value of a co-working space. So have you come across or heard or just have notions of some misconceptions about what it means to be a part of a community like that?
I think the misconception is the community part. I think most people think they walk into a community or into a co-working space, they sit at a desk, they maybe wave at somebody, when they walk by them and then they leave. And that is true of a lot of co-working spaces. And it's done that way, again, intentionally at a lot of those spaces. Really, a lot of what makes some co-working spaces different than just going to, a Starbucks or a Panera is simply that you know what chair you're going to be sitting in, or there will be a chair there for you, and it's a little bit quieter. Like there's not a huge difference outside of that. What we wanted to do was to make this a community first and foremost, where you came to get your work done. So we are not just a co-working space. We exist to be the community for the women that they need. So I lived in Knoxville for 7 years. We can never get the numbers right. I think 7 years before I really decided to kind of lean into this entrepreneurship passion. And I searched entrepreneurship Knoxville for the first time. I didn't know everything that was out there. And our city and our community is so awesome for entrepreneurs. And I had not been taking advantage of or utilizing any of those or meeting with any of those resources because I hadn't done the due diligence to look for it. But at the same time, I think there needs to be that promotion of what's happening in the city. And I think that we kind of joined the community at the same time that promotion was starting to happen. But I feel like we've been able to help be part of that tipping point of telling the story of entrepreneurship in Knoxville. I don't know how I got to that point, but where I got to that sentence, where I started. But I think back to co-working misconceptions, that's where you started. I think co-working can be whatever you want it to be. And I didn't know what I wanted. I just knew as I was looking for a space that I wasn't finding what I wanted. I wanted to be out of my house. I wanted to be around other people. I wanted to have coworkers. And that's not what traditional co-working is. But turned out we made it. Here, turns out you can make that here.
Yeah. And I think that speaks to the community that we're in too, that it's, if you have an idea and you're willing to raise your hand and go for it, there's people out there that will help you see it through.
Yep. Well, and I have always, so in my professional life, I've been very involved from a leadership perspective with our international organization and our local state chapter of that. And what I tell everybody is you're going to get out of it what you put into it. And I think that this is a great example of that. I have kind of gone into the entrepreneurship community and have gotten as engaged as possible with it. And that engagement has given back. And that's not why I did it, but it's a great return on the time, is knowing that if I need somebody to paint an accent wall, which I do, in our conference room, I know where to go to find that person. I may not know who the person is, but I know the resources to go to find that person. Or if one of my members here says, I'm just really struggling with XYZ, somebody in the office, it's not just me, somebody in the office is going to say to them, well, go see so-and-so. They can point you in the right direction. And I don't think in a traditional co-working space, you just walk around to people who you don't know. Be like, I really need a good accountant, and here's why. You may say I need a good accountant, but you're not going to say because I've screwed up my QuickBooks or, I think I've been paying myself incorrectly. You're not going to go into the detail of what you need. So you're not going to get the right kind of, you're just going to get whoever their accountant is, and that may not be who you need. Here, we know more of the story behind why you need an accountant. And in our general entrepreneurship community in Knoxville, great accountants out there, but different ones are right for different people.
I think you hit on that. That's a really, really good piece of advice, because that's one thing that I sometimes struggle with different, like massive thousands and thousands of people types of groups that are like you find them on Facebook and LinkedIn and all of that, is that most people will put out a very general question of who here can do X.
Yes.
As there's so many nuances that just because you're getting advice and names doesn't necessarily mean that is the best thing for you. So I think that's a huge, huge point of just the superpower is knowing the context and therefore getting the best advice possible.
Well, and that, to kind of go full circle with, talking about legacy, I hope that when I have a woman who comes here to look around and it's not a good fit for her, because we're not a good fit. We're not a great fit for someone who's looking to do massage therapy, because we don't have space for that. But we have women who come in here to look at that. But I don't just say, sorry, it's not going to work. I say, why don't you check out this place? Or why don't you check out this place? Or, you've got more than one person on your team, so why don't you go check out this place? And so I'm hopeful that by doing that, the next time somebody asks them for their service and they don't feel like they're a great option for them, maybe they'll suggest to them, okay, go check out this person or this person. That's the ripple effect I think that we're trying for, is that we will help anybody and we'll answer anybody's questions. And in return, what we're hoping is that they do the same for other people, whatever their way is.
Mm-hmm. I think that sometimes it's an undervalued superpower that I feel a lot of women have.
Yep.
That because speaking just personally, that was always something when I was in corporate America, that was my superpower, was knowing who I needed to talk to get the thing done that I needed to get done. Yeah. And I think that can be said of, it's not something that we talk about openly so much, but I feel like it's something we should be like touting and,
Well, in corporate America, you're taught to protect your knowledge, right? Like you're protecting your IP all the time, because if you give it away, you may be the one that gets let go, or somebody else may take your idea and give it as their own. And I think that has been passed down. I think some really not awesome things have been passed down generation to generation, year to year. The ripple effect is real there. So how do we change what ripples are happening? How do we redo this? My kids have now seen me in my 40s launching something brand new. They've seen us work it. They've seen us, they've seen every angle of it. They have been here building furniture with us. My son, who's 12, said to me in the car one day, right before we opened, we were driving down the highway past a Walmart, and he goes, before Girl Boss, I never would have thought about it. But when they opened that Walmart, somebody had to build the shelves. Somebody had to put all the things on the shelves. He's I never thought about it. So even just having my kids see, number one, that you can do it, but that it takes work, that anything that is out there doesn't just magically appear, there, you have to get there. So.
Yeah. I think, my vision and hope, if I had one for like the way that business is taught for like younger students, is really showing that it's a entire network of humans that are all moving together to create these things. So while we talk about the CEO or the founder, and they're the ones that came to the vision, or they were promoted because of their work that they're doing, it's really, we need to be looking at it from the holistic part of every single person was involved in building this thing up. And we really need to look at it from that perspective. Well, it's great to celebrate the person who founded it or the person who started it. I mean, they didn't do it alone. and a lot of times we lose sight of that because we are so ingrained in knowing just about that one human instead of understanding everybody else that actually really made it happen.
Well, and so I tell this to a lot of people. I'm still trying to figure out the right way to say it, but I have been blessed with an abundance of positive feedback with what we have done. And it's aimed at me personally. And I am uncomfortable with it. But, it is all given as a gift to me. And I feel unworthy of it. A lot of times I have a hard time, thank you, I will accept that and take it in. And the reason for that is I look at someone like Oprah, and she is out there doing good for the world just because she wants to do good for the world. She gets a lot of accolades for it, but I feel very strongly that she just has a North Star of wanting to do good. And then I look at some others who maybe started that way, and now it's monetized for them. And that is their kind of brand. And I don't want to say that I don't think Oprah has any bad things, but just looking at her, I oftentimes think to myself, how do I launch this business, accept the positive reinforcement that's coming back to me, and stay Oprah and not this way? How do I continue to do it because that's what I want to do, and stay true to it, and not because it becomes about business or about money?
Mm-hmm.
And I think we hit a tipping point a couple years ago where women started thinking like that. I'm not the only person who thinks like this, but there are not a lot of us that are willing to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's important for me, is that we keep it harnessed for the good.
And there's other layers to that, wanting to stay humble, wanting to stay grounded, but continuing to do the work that you want to do. Yeah. And accepting of the positive reinforcement and feedback without it going too far to your head. But at the same time, you need to be willing to accept the praise and not turning it away, which is, an element of like imposter syndrome. But as
you hit that sweet spot in there, that you're not like, hey, everybody should have me on their podcast, I think our story is super interesting, and the more people that hear it, the better for our mission. But I don't want to be out there just like, hey, come book me. Who am I? I'm an ant in the world. But yeah, that's important to me. I've had a lot of people over the years too who have encouraged me to maybe give speaking a shot, and I'm always kind of like, no, I think that's not really my bag. But then sometimes I think maybe I do have a story to tell that other women would relate to, and the more we as women speak, which is why I love what you do, the more other women realize it's okay to do that, or to even just tell their story and not just be the framework of who everybody thinks they are because they only ever hear that little part of it, Mm-hmm. And I think what you do with Let Her Speak, with the whole idea of delving deeper into that from the first time I met you and heard that passion come out of you, I just think it's super important for us as women, as humans, but especially as women, to be willing to just be an open book to people.
Thank you. I will accept your compliment. Because there's a little bit of a double-edged sword with what we're talking about, right? So there's it's so ingrained in, I think, more of the story of women that we need to be, come across as being humble and grounded and have humility and not get too big-headed about things. But, that's kind of a double standard to men a lot of times. I think the tide is turning slightly but there's still so many men CEOs that are have the egos the size of Jupiter, and they're still praised, because at the same time, women are also being told, and this is where there's been that tipping point of, we need to be talking about ourselves more, and we need to be celebrating ourselves and touting our abilities and touting the accomplishments that we've had. So how do you perceive kind of walking that very, very thin line that most of us have to tiptoe on?
So I am a person who, if I'm in an elevator with somebody, I just will talk to them. I'm an introvert. No one believes me, but if I go to a cocktail party or an open house or a women in entrepreneurship coffee, I'm the person standing in the corner, because I don't just like walk up and start conversations with people. I don't do that well at all. I've had to get much better at it since being a business owner, but it's still like I'm a little anxious even thinking about it. But if I'm in an elevator with somebody, I'm like, we could get stuck in this thing for hours. So we might as well just get to know each other. It may be 3 seconds, but whatever. I'll tell them I like their shoes, or what are they in town for, or whatever. And I'm oftentimes get looked at like I've got, 5 heads when I do that. I don't know why and I say in America because I've not seen that as much in Europe or Canada, et cetera, want to stay to ourselves so much. Like, we're all on this earth together. We might as well, get to know each other, or at least say hi and how you doing today. And so that is something I would kind of like to see changed, is that, if you're in an elevator, it's totally cool to talk to somebody. It doesn't make you creepy or weird or whatever. And I think that then translates into the bigger voice of, as a woman, being willing to talk about what you're doing. You hear women all the time. What do you do? Oh, I just stay at home. You don't just stay at home. Like, you're legit running a corporation, or when people would ask me what I did for the longest time, I was like, oh, I own a company. People ask me what I do now, and I say, I own 2 companies. I've got a meeting planning company, and I own a co-working space that I founded for female entrepreneurs. There is a big difference in saying it those 2 different ways. And if I say it the first way, I'm allowing them to immediately think less of me. I'm saying to them, don't think anything good about what I do. And in the second way, I'm saying to them, I own who I am, and I believe in what I do. Just 2 different sentences. I think we need to teach that.
Yeah. So that's actually something I haven't announced yet, but I am working on workshops, and one of the tracks for the workshops is communication, confidence, and financial literacy for women, to be able to help toe that line, but also start changing how we frame and accept confidence from women. Because I think even within our own gender, we have a tendency of judging women that come across as too confident in a way, or talking about themselves, and we're more accepting of that when we hear a guy do it. And I think it's partially because we're just so used to it coming from one side and not the other. So I'm glad that you touched, because that's a part of what I found in my research that I'm trying to work into, an actual education for helping women out.
That's fantastic. I mean, how did I learn that? I didn't take a class. I didn't take a workshop, but I looked at the women around me and watched what they were doing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Oprah does it. Michelle does it.
It all comes back to Oprah. No, it all comes back to Michelle. Let's be honest. Yeah. I mean, you watch the women around you, and you watch who is successful. And I don't mean successful like they're the CEO or financially successful, but you can tell like who is successful in what it is that they are trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And what you may be trying to do is go to the Olympics. What you may be trying to do is be a great mom. You may be trying to be a great business owner. Success looks different for everybody. And I think that's something else that we need to be more accepting of, is that success looks different for everybody. Because there are people who think because I travel or because, I'll be at the office until late and not be home for dinner with the kids, that I'm not being a successful mom. But in my view, the way I am doing it and what we're teaching our children is success in our eyes. And I think people need to be willing to accept that for themselves and others, that their success could be defined differently.
Yep. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I've started to, and this is actually the theme for the Women's Summit. I know I got all these things that I haven't announced because I have no time to actually announce them all, but I will be. But that's what I've been continuously trying to reframe, and I found that for my brain to work, I need to not so much use the word success when I'm thinking about things, but using the word significance. Mm-hmm. And that's helped me reframe a lot, not just for myself and how I define whether I'm doing good work and doing a good job, but also when I'm looking at other, if I'm talking to other people, I've started to try to reframe away from success and saying significance instead.
I like that, because I feel if you ask 10 people if Girl Boss was successful, they would say, well, how much money did you lose? Or how much money did you make? And let's be honest, I need to pay the rent and keep the lights on, right? I mean, mm-hmm. There is a financial piece that has to happen there. But I judge our success much more on the significance or the difference we make in the city and in the lives of the general entrepreneurship community.
Yep. Yeah, and I think I'm glad to see that there's a rising collective voice that are talking about that. Being, someone that went to business school and, for my undergrad and my grad school. And so, yeah, your top line revenue, your profitability, scalability, all that kind of stuff is pounded into you. To the point of you either completely accept it or you kind of push against it. And there's actually a rising group of voices that's coming up that's, instead of talking so much about like unicorns and the ones that are just, incredible amount of money, but technically a lot of them aren't even profitable and they're not doing any good for the world, really, when you really think about it. And a lot of the times they'll scale too quickly and then they have to let go of most of their workforce. So they've just forced people into unemployment. There's a group that's called Zebras that, so there's this,
I have a pen in front of me. I'm going to have to remember that.
So the Zebra Society focuses more on, let's look at businesses from the standpoint of not just, is it a good business model? Can they sustain? Can they actually hire people and keep people, give them a secure job? But also, what is the good that they're doing for the community that they're in? And so they're trying to start changing the
Zebra.
I signed up for their newsletter and stuff. I haven't been able to go to like any of their virtual stuff, but I agree. It was founded by two women actually that wrote an article for Harvard Business Review. So you can read that article about zebras. But yeah, it's called like Zebras United or something like that.
I'm not reaching out to them when we get off the phone.
Yeah.
Totally mistaken.
Yeah.
Highlight list.
If I remember right, I know that their big annual event is in Atlanta, or at least it was.
Okay.
So I want to say that they're actually not that far away from us.
Okay. Yeah. They're on my list. All right.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Every day I have goosebumps or I cry over some sort of content that is made within these walls externally. And to me, like that connection that you just gave me about zebras, that's huge information for me. So goosebumps checked off for the day.
Okay. It's been a good day then.
Yeah, earlier, but that's cool. We'll take it to goosebump day.
Okay. All right. I can accept that. So the last question that I have, and you talked a little bit about this, and so I want to bring you back to the uncomfortableness of talking about yourself, because I need to push myself to do the same thing. So you talked, for one thing, about this misperception that people don't think that you're an introvert when you are, but and I know, just because we're friends, that you are a type A as
100%.
well. 100%. Yeah. And so I think that's sometimes a common misperception of people who are type A, is that they should be extroverted too. But what is something else that you can think of that might be a misperception of who you are as a person?
Now we're going to end it with crying. I'm not going to cry. I think that I have it all together. I get a lot of that from people in business and life who are just like, I don't know how you do it all, and you do it all well. I mean, I feel like an idiot even saying that out loud. And the truth is, I don't think there's anybody out there that is doing it all and doing it well. There's just not. And I hate that. And I will use the word hate. I hate that people have that perception of me, because I have tried so hard to be so authentic about who I am on social media. When I talk to people, just one-on-one conversations, I try to be pretty dang honest about it. So I don't know what I'm doing that gives that vibe off. And maybe I do have it together better than I think I do. But I don't want people to look at me like I'm some ideal of having it all together. I would rather somebody look at me as another human who is juggling the same things or has the same difficulties, whatever they are, as others. And this is how I'm handling it, and be able to have that open conversation. Again, it goes back to, in Canada, you'd say to somebody, be like, oh, Oliver's having a really rough day today, and so I'm going to be late to work. Here, what we would say is, oh, is your boss going to be okay with that? How much work are you missing out on? Like, we would empathize on the work side of it. There, they would be like, oh, Billy is also having an issue sleeping at night, and maybe it's what he's eating for breakfast. And they would have the conversation on the side of the family. And I realize I reference my family a lot, but we wanted kids for a long time, and we worked real hard to have these kids. And so as much as I do keep kids and life and work life and personal life, that I'm able to kind of delineate that. It's important to me that I have a life and I work, not that I work so that I have a life. And that's the lesson I want to teach my kids. So I don't want anybody who ever looks at me to think that they need to sacrifice one or the other just so they can have it all together or get it all done and make it look easy or whatever. I just don't, they need to have a conversation with me and see that is not, that's not the situation,
Mm-hmm. So. Yep. I really love that perspective, because I think a lot of times, we can sometimes have the tendency of looking at as a woman as the shiny example, and she's up on this pedestal because she figured it all out, or at least our perception is, when really, those women are just in the battlefield with us, alongside us, and it's much more beneficial to have to realize that than to put them up on this esteemed.
Well, and I think too, we do have a tendency with women who are financially well off or financially stable. And so what you always will say about them is, yeah, but they've got a nanny, or yeah, I could look like that if I had a trainer every day, or, whatever like that. We excuse it away with that they've got the means to have a support in some area that is helping. That's a normal part of conversation. We're like middle-class people, but you know what? I do pay someone to clean my house, and I do that because that is support that I need. And maybe that's what's helping everybody think I've got it all together, because I didn't spend, the 2 hours vacuuming my house. So I think we need to not question where women are choosing to get their support from.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
I don't know if that all came out the right way, but
no. Well, I think there's always other people behind you that are helping you out, and we don't always pay attention to that.
And it may not be a paid service. Those were probably not awesome examples, but that person who has a nanny, like they may have a job that affects, their job may affect 200 employees. And in order to do that, they need to travel. And in order to do that, they need to have a nanny. It doesn't make them bad that they have figured out what they need to support that, Mm-hmm. Listening to Elizabeth Warren speak last night, I had never heard the story about her Aunt B moving in and helping her with childcare when she was a young mom and a teacher. I had never heard that story before.
Oh, yeah.
And we don't live near family, and we both work, hard, long hours. And when a kid gets sick, like we have to figure that out on our own. And so for some of these people, it's that their mom can move in with them, or their parents live down the street. Like that may be their support network. And so if we're accepting of that, I think we need to be accepting of others who find support different ways.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think that just summarizes it we're all having similar battles, but we're choosing to fight them and having different people that are a part of it. And who are we to judge how any one woman is handling that?
Thank you. Put that on a shirt. Put that on a shirt. I like it.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Erika, for spending the last, I don't know what we talked about, like 45 minutes together. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. This was fun. I get nervous talking about it, and then every time I do it, I leave and I'm like, that was so fun.
I know, you gotta psych yourself out.
Well, and also, I'm going to say one last thing. When I talk about it, I am able to verbalize all the things that have been in my head for a long time that I didn't even realize were there. Mm-hmm. Sometimes during these conversations, I'll say something and I'm like, well, I didn't even know I knew that. I had realized that thought. So it's helpful.
Yeah, it's kind of nice to sometimes surprise yourself.
It really is. And like actually talk through the things you've learned during your travels. So
yep. Yeah, I think right now too, more than ever, at least I know personally, that's been something that's coming up a lot more often because I'm not talking to people. So when I am talking to people, it's like, oh, I forgot that I had those thoughts until I finally got to interact with somebody.
Keep it up. Keep interacting.
Now that you've heard Erika's story of where she's been, tune in for our next episode where we catch up with her 2 years later to learn how far she's come. This episode of She Speaks is brought to you by our amazing partners at First Horizon Bank. She Speaks is produced, edited, and scored by the very talented Travis Tench at Oak Hill Audio. If you loved the episode you just heard and want to support Let Her Speak's mission of elevating real women's stories, don't forget to follow, subscribe, and share at Let Her Speak USA. Together, we will make our voices heard.